With an unparalleled ability to depict reality, the camera has long been used to record moments in history. Today, we are accustomed to not just hearing about events, we expect to see visual proof in the form of news footage or in the work of the photojournalist. But although photographs appear to be factual, they are inevitably shaped or biased by the photojournalist's own point of view. Pulitzer Prize winner Ross Baughman has developed what many consider to be a controversial solution. Baughman believes in becoming a part of the environment in which he is photographing. Baughman will even take on the physical appearance of his subjects, as in the 1983 landing of American paratroopers in Grenada.
I specialize in predicting events, of anticipating where news is likely to happen, positioning myself so that I'll be ready to catch it as it unfolds. Being too involved with my subjects is a very delicate issue, ethically, journalistically. I have solved that myself by joining on entirely, completely, wholeheartedly with my subjects. I openly collaborate with them to tell their story. Some editors are nervous about that, but when I do a story about the Ku Klux Klan, I really want to bring a Klansman right into your living room. And I feel I'm doing, therefore, the greatest service to you as a curious onlooker to have a chance to hear what these people say. I wind up gaining the trust of a very wide variety of people. Some of my critics have said that I go too far, that I must be some kind of chameleon, but it's a label that I don't mind. In fact, I really do everything I can to change my appearance, to identify as closely with my subjects as I can. For instance, when I did a story on the gangs in Los Angeles, I was given a name, given a code of conduct to follow, even a change of clothes. I was, in effect, wearing their street uniform. They were very afraid that I was a narcotics agent from the police. And I promised them that because they were so worried about exposing their drug activities, that I would turn a blind eye to that as part of the bargain, that they would let me see everything else in their life, including knifings, beatings, all kinds of gang warfare and the rituals of their life.
Baughman's photographs are often powerful in their subject matter. Presentation of strong content is a trend that began back in the early days of photojournalism. In the early 1900s, sociologist Lewis Hine used photographs to expose the plight of child laborers. Hine's work is considered to have been instrumental in the passage of the child labor laws. In the mid-1930s, the Farm Security Administration sent photographers to record rural conditions brought about by severe droughts and the Depression. Dorothea Lange concentrated on migrant workers who traveled across the country seeking employment. Walker Evans documented the marginal existence of sharecroppers living in the South. Others worked under less official circumstances. The Photo League was formed in 1936 by photographers concerned about social conditions. Like many photojournalists, Ross Baughman concentrates on little seen areas of society. His focus on the fringe grew out of his background in psychology and first found expression during his early days as a newspaper photographer.
In the fall of 1976, while I was working for the Lorraine Journal, I was traveling through the west side of Cleveland, stumbled across a very sinister-looking bookstore that had the title "The White People's Party" stenciled out on the front face of the building. When I went inside, I discovered it was, in fact, a front for the distribution of racist white power neo-Nazi literature. And in fact, a cell of the American Nazi movement was headquartered there. I worked very slowly to gain their trust. I actually volunteered to work at the bookstore, to become a member of the party, to wear the uniform, to wear a pistol when I was on duty, as they required. And finally, over a period of 8 months, became the official party photographer for the whole country, and somewhat of the historian too, which made it easier for me to ask a lot of questions and to take pictures of everybody that I wanted to, and to get to the bottom of a very frightening plan hatched by radical members of the Nazi movement to kill Henry Kissinger and 11 other prominent Jewish leaders in the United States, as well as to blow up the Soviet embassy, the Israeli embassy, the Nigerian embassy, and a number of others, all on the 4th of July, 1977.
Baughman's subsequent alert to the authorities led to the arrest of the radicals behind the assassination plot. In this instance, his belief in his role as an objective recorder of events was overruled by larger social responsibilities. The work of the photojournalist is often presented as a photo essay, a story told with both words and pictures. In the 30s, before the advent of television, the photo essay was a common form of communication and entertainment. In America, the photo essay reached its peak in the incredible growth of picture magazines, such as Life. Life's circulation grew to several million, and the work of photojournalists, such as W. Eugene Smith, was known to people everywhere. From the 1930s to the 60s, Life was a major showplace for photojournalists. One of the most memorable was Larry Burrows. In the 50s, Burrows covered every type of story imaginable, from personalities of the day such as Brigitte Bardot and Winston Churchill, to military confrontations in Africa. To an essay on Dr. Gordon Seagrave, a British surgeon who spent 40 years dispensing medicine in a remote region of Burma. The breadth of Burrows' experience prepared him well for the photographic essays he is best known for, scenes of the conflict in Vietnam. A technical perfectionist, Burrows would carry as much equipment as was physically possible. 4 cameras was standard. The only photographer to cover the entire war, Burrows was also one of the first to shoot a war in full color. The photographs he produced remain as timeless evocations of the sadness and suffering of war. From the strain and stress on the faces of the soldiers to the children maimed in the conflict. To the civilians whose lives were forever changed. On February 10th, 1971, Larry Burrows' career came to an abrupt end. The helicopter in which he was flying was shot down over Laos. There were no survivors. Wherever wars are being fought, photojournalists are there. Ross Baughman has covered several, sometimes working on speculation, sometimes on assignment.
Hello, Diana. This is Ross Baughman. Are you there?
Newsweek, for instance, commissioned Baughman to cover the war in El Salvador.
When I was in El Salvador the last time, I was reporting on a battle taking place in a very inaccessible part of the country, and there were no other journalists that were able to get through. So I had to come up with my own blend of text and photography. I wound up doing that story as a long-term feature, but I also spent weeks there covering the war, the fighting. And I would spend time with the guerrillas and spend time with the army. It's very disturbing to me to see the number of journalists from all around the world that have been wounded or killed in Central America. And I'm afraid that it's because of the disturbing trend that journalists are trying to shuttle back and forth on a daily basis between enemy lines. It happened to me. I took a big gamble going against the advice of friends the local villagers who made their warnings very clear, and my own instincts to be pushing myself just as absolutely far as I have ever gone. I walked down a road that was sealed off, that had been denied to either side for years and years, that had landmines planted everywhere, and I stepped on one. I was amazingly lucky that that I wasn't hurt worse than I was. The modern miracles of medicine put my leg back together again over several operations when just 10 or 15 years ago the leg would have been crippled for life. Since that happened to me, I have worked on stories only in the United States, but I think that they are filled with just as much difficulty and risk, albeit of other types. When I'm covering wars, dangers are very clear. I can cover myself, I can know how far to push myself. But when I was recently doing a story on acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS, I was terrified at first. I had no idea of how far I could go, how far I could push myself, what the risks were in contracting this deadly disease. But after I had the chance during the story to talk with a number of experts, doctors involved in treating the disease, I was able to plan out how much better I could take care of myself and avoid risks, unnecessary risks.
In spite of his efforts to avoid physical harm, Baughman has continued to push his work to the limit, such as photographing in a New York park notorious for drug traffic. To conceal his dangerous role, photographer Baughman was accompanied by an assistant who helped obscure his movements. He was also outfitted with specialized equipment.
So I turned to my rangefinder camera because it's so quiet in its operation, and then had the luxury of the world's quietest winder to be attached to the bottom. Obviously, I couldn't be fooling around with the gears. Just determining the exposure and the focus would be a challenge. But the key came with this bulb, an old-fashioned bulb trigger release, which when once in place, would allow me to shoot as many pictures as I could keep loaded in the camera. I'd run this down the sleeve of a corduroy shirt, and the only other problem I'd be facing was the bulkiness in the front. So that by wearing a jacket, luckily this first story took place when it was very cold out, and this afternoon it's just getting to be a little chilly in New York City, so I shouldn't attract much attention by having sort of a heavy, bulky coat.
The concealed camera is just one of the tools used by Ross Baughman. Like most photojournalists, he owns more equipment than is practical to carry into the field. In preparing for an assignment, the question is always what to take along.
It varies every job that you may run across. If I'm doing an environmental portrait here in New York, I may want to have a single camera body, maybe a second lens. I might want to take along a flash. There are some kinds of stories that I do that are a little bit more risky, where I have to consider that my subjects may try and take away my camera at any moment, and I'd have to be willing to lose everything, the film, the camera. There have been times where in the middle of the war in Lebanon or in Central America, I've had to have maybe 50 pounds of equipment, be ready to use it instantaneously, and also pack up and run for my life if I have to. I start off with the motor-driven SLR that I'm going to be using most often for a wide variety of lenses, from ultra-wide to zoom. This kind of optical versatility you wouldn't have on the rangefinder. And I'll take along what I almost consider a little disposable camera. These are wonderful. You can buy these in New York for less than $100. I'm very pragmatic when it comes to getting the picture in whatever way it takes. Designing a camera system, designing a way to carry what I think I'll need is very important to me.
The basic configuration is something that you can figure out by just taking your cameras and making the most compact arrangement of everything that you'll have to have along with you. So you can start with the camera that you'll be using with the motor drive, or you may not even have one or need one, and you'll be packing the other equipment around it as closely as possible. The zoom lens will dictate, or whatever your telephoto is, will dictate the height that's necessary, and then you'll want to have a couple of additional lenses that you'll just pack right alongside there. That basic brick is what's going to have to be translated into a compact bag.
The role of the editor has always been important in photojournalism. After all, it is the editor who makes the final decisions on which pictures to use. But the first stage of the editing process is often done by the photojournalist.
I'm a very tough editor on myself, and when I am looking at color pictures, I want to be the first one to go through those boxes. I throw out anything that, even though it might be technically perfect, I would not want to give editors the chance to use the wrong picture. I will be very stingy. I'll offer maybe only 4 or 5 really favorite pictures that I like, still backing that up with a few of the second choices, the pictures that I thought were acceptable but not all that great, and then we come up with complete captions and text.
This is obviously excellent and very telling with Duarte there. Something like this is, for a news magazine, this is a beautiful picture.
I don't think I've ever had a layout appear anywhere in a newspaper or a magazine that has been 100% the way that I had intended it, the way that I saw it in the first place. There's always just a little disappointment. But if you accept the role of contributing photographer, you have to realize that you are only contributing your efforts to a larger team that will work with them.
In 1978, Ross Baughman won a Pulitzer Prize for his coverage of Rhodesia's guerrilla war. It was a high point in his career, yet at the same time, the photo story raised a controversial question of ethics.
I was sent to Southern Africa by the Associated Press to report on the whole range of military and political events surrounding the change from white minority rule in Rhodesia until blacks finally took control of the government and turned it into Zimbabwe. I rode with the Gray Scouts along the western battle zone in Rhodesia near the Botswana border for 15 days and saw their troops burn villages, loot stores, rape and torture men and women, and I was photographing all of this thinking that it might possibly even get worse. From my science education, I was very aware of the Heisenberg effect, a law borrowed from the study of physics, I believe, where the mere observation and measurement of any event in the world will be changed by that measuring process. When I was in Rhodesia, I watched a local black politician and his family tortured over a period of 3 days, and it eventually led to his death. And my friends just shake their head and say, Ross, how could you have managed that? How could you, sleep at night knowing that you could have intervened? And in fact, there's no question that there would have been dozens of ways for me to tamper, to perhaps even save this man's life. Maybe even just postpone his pain. But I would have been aborting the story the story was, or the most important question was, are Rhodesian soldiers going that far? Are they really murdering people, or are they just having to use the necessary force under difficult circumstances to try and question people? Well, it was my uppermost responsibility to find out if these were young 19-year-old troopers capable of cold-blooded murder. And because I respected the process of the story and was willing to let it unfold on its own terms, then I was finally able to discover the horrifying answer to my question. Probably the most difficult ethical issue that I face, and that many of my colleagues disagree with me on, is the role of the journalist as observer versus journalist as human being with a heart who must participate when events are so demanding. I don't feel that I have that responsibility as an agent of the establishment to intrude, to interrupt, to become any kind of a catalyst. I would say if I have any political stand as a photographer, it's that everything can be shown. Everything that's available, we should be able to see, that there are no forbidden images. I'm pro-information.